Right. So I hope this sounds actually clear. But yes. So I recall hearing my own story that I recorded a few months back. I think about my old army ghost story encounter that I had. And yes, I was. Let me tell you a bit of my army experiences. Okay, okay. I did actually had a few. Now that I am actually remembering all the ghost encounters that I've had, then I'm gonna tell you right now. Well, I was I was enlisted in the army back in 1999. Yeah, it was the year 2000. I think it was on the December 16, a few weeks before Christmas. So I was posted into the army. So I was shipped. I was sort of like I took a ferry to this island for where all the new recruits, all those who are newly recruits who just got posted into the army. That's where they will have to go through basic military training and everything. And so I was posted in a J Koi J company, which is a Jaguar company. I was in a Jaguar company. Well, my first few months when I was there, I never even thought of like ghost or whatever. But I know that in that island there where I was at, right, there was actually one more old campsite which has that something really freaky happened on that island. And that happened back in the 80s. It was actually about this recruit. One night they went a night on a 1 week. We have to go for like a 1 week jungle training. So there's gonna be like a night. You move in a platoon formation. Kind of like a formation, or you march at night. In the jungle. That kind of thing. So what happened in the 80s was there was this company that was doing their training at night. Something happened to someone back in the 80s, I think. Even until now, if you Google Army Singapore Army Pulau, Pulau. Pulau means island. And Tekong, Pulau Tekong, Tekong, Pulau Tekong ghost story. So there's this famous ghost story that happened in the 80s, and that really happened. So what actually happened in the 80s was this company. I can't remember what company, but it wasn't at where my camp was. It was actually further up on the hills. And those buildings that happened in the 80s, where the haunting took place, was actually, if you all the recruits who would go through night trainings, or who would be marching at night or during the day, right, would pass by that old building. And that building has been sealed off. It has been sealed off, cordon off. Some stories in the buildings has been like sealed off with walls, and like it's unusable for any recruits to stay in that camp. So what actually happened back in the 80s was there was this company. They were doing night training. So one recruit, I think, went missing that night. He went missing. They all went marching. So that recruit decided to like he needed to like ease himself. He needed to like maybe ease himself, like I think took a piece or something like that. So he decided to like not tell anyone. This was what I heard. Not tell anyone, and he just like did his own thing, and he disappeared himself alone, and the whole company just continued on without him, and they all didn't know that someone was left behind, so they all marched on all the way back to the camp, and when they reached the camp, they did a head count, and they realized that someone is missing, so this recruit was missing, and they did a search party that night. They did a search party. They went back to where they left off, and they still couldn't find that missing recruit or missing person. They couldn't find him. Till the next morning. They couldn't find him. They went around. Can you imagine army officers who experience in like topography, using maps and everything? I mean, they've trained there for years, and they still couldn't find the missing guy and the missing person. And from what I heard was it took them about 2 nights, to find that missing person. So from what I heard was, I think they hired some religious monks or whatever, and they then managed to find that guy. And this is a true story from what I heard. Every army officers or every army recruits in Singapore will know this story. This story is like very famous. It's like the famous story of that island. It really happened, and what actually happened was 2 days later on, they did the search and everything. They used a bit of some monks help and everything. So the monk managed to like managed to find the location of the recruit, and he was found with his body. He was dead, and his intestines was cut open. His intestines was cut open, and his guts, his liver, his heart, and basically his internal organs were arranged in a. When you do when you strip your rifle, right? When you're in the army, right? When you do your rifle strip, what do you call that? Procedure, right? A procedure or a rifle strip test. You have to align your rifle kit, in position. Like, this is where the muzzle is. This is where the firing bolt. This is where the firing pin is. You have to arrange them in the particular order. On a piece of on the ground, on the ground. Yeah. Every recruit will have to like learn where to place the rifle parts. And so they found this missing recruit. He was already dead. He was already dead, and his body was composing. And the strange part was his internal organs were arranged in the rifle kit. Positioning order. So they actually took his dead body, and they put him in a body bag, and that incident happened like too suddenly. Like there had to be some investigation that needs to be done, so they can't just bury him straight away, so what they did was they actually took the body back to where his camp is or was at that time, and they put the body on his bed, they put the body on his bed, and all the recruits were pretty much freaked out. And I think there's one interview where you can find on YouTube. There's one interview who was in that same room when that incident happened, and that recruit actually was there in that room, and he actually heard a lot of voices, like screaming voices, and the cupboard, right? The cupboard where the dead, the deceased recruit who met his unfortunate, strange death. his cupboard was rattling, it was rattling and was like shaking violently, and the bed was moving, on its own, like poltergeist kind of stuff, and so it happened for like a week or two, because they were all in that camp, doing their own training and everything, and so what it did was, after they did some investigation, I think even until now this case is unsolved. It's like one of those unsolved case, like no one can pinpoint who did it or how it happened, or it's still unsolved. And due to that incident, that building has been abandoned. That building has been abandoned by the army authority, and they decided like this building must be abandoned. And but after they abandoned that building, right, the hauntings were still going on. So what they did was they hired a religious men from temples and everything, certified like to handle this kind of cases. So what they did was they called a monk, because the deceased was a Chinese. I think his religion was Buddhist or Taoist. So they had to call a Buddhist monk to sort of like coincide with his passing on and everything. So what the monk told the army officer was he's gonna do a ritual, and they actually made a doorway. They actually renovated that whole bunk, and they made a special doorway, and they did a few prayers and everything, and then after that the spirit sort of like went through that doorway, and after that they cordon off, they sealed that doorway, and they cemented that whole ceiling, that whole bunk which had a doorway. And until now, if any recruit were to go in there, that building has been abandoned, and that wall or a doorway is there, like it's been cordoned off and sealed off. I think the main purpose of doing that is it has the deceased soul and spirit has passed on, and they cordon off, so they seal off the section where, so that the spirit won't come back and haunt that island again, or that building again, or so that story happened in the 80s, and that was like so I was when I was doing my recruit training, right, I knew about that story, but I wasn't really much concerned, because I wasn't going to stay in that building, so I was not really scared about that, because that story has been passed on since the 80s. Even before I went into the army, I've heard about this story, and I like, okay, it's like, all right, the lesson learned here is not to venture, like, at night alone, when you're like traveling in a platoon formation. Just stick with your platoon, man. Don't venture out alone or whatsoever. Like things can happen or whatever. So that's the only lesson that every recruit knows, from that incident, But my story is during my time was when I was doing the 1 week jungle training, right. We went to this particular area in Tekong. It's called Unum, UNUM, Unum. And from what I knew, I just cut a story short. That particular area was actually a burial site where a lot of Muslim cemeteries and old villages from the 1930s, 1920s, 40s. Before that, island became a military training ground for the Singapore armed forces, they decided to make that thing into make that island into a military training ground. That island actually belonged to the few villagers who used to live there, and that plot of land where I was doing my night, I was doing the 1 week jungle training, right? We were actually stationed there. I don't know why my OC or my OC, officer, my whole camp OC decide to go to that particular area. I guess it's like a test of our strength and courage, or whatever, And so I didn't know at first when I was there. I didn't know that it was actually haunted. I only realized that something was strange was happening because during the first night when I was there, it was fine. I was like, I had to dig some trenches and everything. Then after that, I had to do a night duty. I had to stand. I had to prone. I had to be in the prone position, like on the ground. Flat down on the ground and just facing this arc of fire. It's like there's you can see pretty much you just have to be awake and just point your rifle and just be awake and be on guard, look, make sure no one is going to enter that particular guard post and everything. So my first night I was doing all that, everything was fine, but second day I woke up, I was we had to go through our day training, learning the basic platoon movement, attack, defense, and everything, so everything was fine. So after dinner I spotted that my platoon officer, he was actually sitting on this rock. He was sitting on this rock, there was this big rock by our campsite, and he was sitting on this big rock and he was meditating, and he was holding a Buddhist prayer beads, and he was just praying, and I was looking at him, and he was just closing his eyes, and I was looking at him, and I was wondering, why is he doing that at night? This is strange, and so I just whatever, maybe he wants to meditate and everything, so I walked back into my campsite, and then my Muslim sergeant, gathered all the Muslim guys, or all the Malay guys, the Malay guys, the Muslim guys, he gathered all of us, and we had to I remember that night, we were all sitting down, all gathered, and he told us this, right? You guys, he told us, you guys, I need to announce something. This area that we are training at right now is actually a burial site, and can you please, if you know how to pray and offer some prayer or whatsoever, the Al-Fatiha prayers and everything, please do so, and pray a lot that these things don't bother you at night and everything, and so I did. I knew how to recite that prayer, so everyone was just saying it at one time. At one time, we all did the prayer thing, and I was wondering, why. This is strange. This is supposed to be a military training, night training, and we have to do this, and it's this is strange, but anyway, I just did what he told us to anyway, because since he told us his training ground and everything, so yeah, so I did that part, everything. So that night I had no guard duty, so I was fine. I was back in my tent, so I was sleeping at night. And that night, right, a lot of things happened, right. I was in my tent with my buddy. My buddy was a Chinese guy, He was the carefree kind of guy, I don't want to know about all these ghost things and everything. He's I just want to go to sleep and just get it done and over with, So I was just sleeping with him, and I was I couldn't sleep that night, that because I heard footsteps walking around my tent, So I was thinking it's probably the guards walking around, or my sergeant just walking around, or whatever, or maybe it was a wild boar or whatever. I didn't even dare to like stick my head out or whatever, and I managed to like fall asleep that night. I just closed my eyes for a while, and then I heard screaming from like tents, from a lot of other recruits who were sleeping in their own tents, like scattered all over the plot of land. Right, they all had nightmares. Every half an hour, someone else who was sleeping was like, ah, and then one of my buddy was even shouting my name. He was like shouting my name, and I was like, what the fuck, man? Everyone had nightmares and everything. And one of them, I think, one of them and my sergeant who called us, they saw something, or they felt sick, I think. So they had to be brought back to our company by a Range Rover. So I didn't know what happened, and all I remembered the next 3 days it was raining very heavily. It was raining 3 days non-stop, and there was like fog at night. I couldn't see a damn thing. It was so foggy, because it was cold. And I remembered I knew that there were two guys who fell sick, and they were back in the company line. So I continued on with my training. It was raining. I fell sick. I had a fever, but I managed to continue on. So the last night of the training was we had to do defense and attack. I was a defense and attack strategy. What do you call that? Training. So I was on the defense line, and the other half of the company was doing the attack line. And so I was like, okay, let's just get it done and over with. But it was so foggy, I couldn't see a damn thing. And then when my platoon sergeant gave us the order to like charge, like charge, all I knew was it was so foggy. I just ran and ran and ran and ran. I was like, I decided to like, fuck, I can't see a damn thing. It's like, it's foggy. I just flew myself down on the ground and just stayed down. I just covered myself somewhere in the ground and just kept shooting, because I don't see the point of running, and like to the point of getting lost. And soon on the training was done, and strangely the fog cleared. And then my OC turned up, and he like, is everything okay? Everything fine? And we did a head count and everything. Yeah, okay, everyone was there and everything. And so after that, we packed up all our things back in the tunnel, the truck, and it was around, I remember we reached back our company line, everything, around 3 a.m. in the morning plus. We managed to do everything fast because we were all like scared, and like, let's just get it done and over with. So by the time we reached the campsite, right, I was really sick at that time. I was having a fever. I remember we had to sit outside the company line, outside the patch of grass, like where like the OCs like will like verse talk to us like what to do and everything, before we go anywhere. So we had to sit there, and like for a few hours, and we were being monitored. We were being monitored by our OCs and everyone. And then that night I found out that like there were like stories, everyone was talking, of what happened to the two person who fell sick. Apparently I found out that one of my sergeant who gathered us together to recite our prayers, right, he fell sick because he saw something that really shocked him, and he was scared, and he had a fever, he fell sick. And as for one recruit, he himself fell like weak, and he kept vomiting, that kind of thing. He fell sick, so he was brought back to the company line, and the medic took care of him. And we found out that when he went back into his when he was given his medicines, when he was given his medicines and everything, he was okay. He was pretty much calm, and the medic told him, just go back to your bunk and just fall asleep. And the moment when he got back to his bunk, he saw like one long strand of hair, that was on his bed. The story was like the long strand of hair was like not like from your head to your shoulder. It's long as like from your head all the way down to your ankles or your knees. That it's around that length. And when he saw that thing, right, he became more sick. He became more sick, and he had to be taken to the hospital or something. I remember I saw a few medics and ambulance, and that guy was taken to the hospital, and I don't know what happened after that. And that night, after we did the head count and everything, finally all the OCs, all the officers for all the platoon 1, platoon 2, platoon 3, platoon 4. There were 4 platoons, right? Everything was finally cleared. They actually what the officers did was they went around the whole building to ensure that there was nothing in there and it was safe. So it was around by 4:30 a.m. I remember we finally managed to like go back into our bunks, throw our SBOs on the floor, our helmets, our rifles, and I took a shower and everything. And this was something that happened to me, right? Okay. And it was around 4:30 a.m. I was 4:45 a.m. I straight away got into the shower. So me and my buddy from the same bunk, we were showering. So he was showering, and he finished. He showered first. He showered first, and so after he finished showering, he was just sitting outside the bunk corridor, and he was just polishing his boots. And so he was just polishing his boots. It was just him alone, and I happened to be like one of the last few guys who just finished showering, because there were a lot of recruits who were using the shower rooms, and I happened to be the last few. So I just came out of the toilet. I wasn't really that scared, because as I was showering, there were a lot of like noises of other recruits are walking and talking, so it felt kind of not so quiet and everything. So I just finished showering and everything. So I just walked out of the toilet with my towel, wrapped in my towel and everything, and I saw my buddy. He was polishing his boots and like cleaning his SBOs and everything, by the corridor, just polishing and cleaning and everything. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I was just walking towards him, and suddenly he said, hey, stop there. He told me to like stop at where you at, and he said, can you go back into the toilet and like come back again? So I was like, what the hell, man? I was like, okay. So I just like walked back into the toilet, and I came out, and I walked back towards him again, and he said, okay, you walk back slowly, and the moment when I approached him, he told me, okay, stop here, and then he said, just look away for a while. Then he recited some prayers. I don't know what he was doing. He recited some prayers and everything, and then he spat on the ground, on that drain, that small drain, and then he said, he looked at me and he said, okay, you can go inside now. Then I told him, why, man? Then I asked him why. Then he said that he saw a little girl dressed in like the 1930s 40s kind of traditional clothing, behind me, following me, and then I was like, are you sure you saw that? He said, I saw that, and that's why I told you to like go back and forth to make sure that thing wasn't there. And he saw the thing, and he said that he knew how to like recite certain prayers to make these things to go away, and then suddenly I remembered that the first day when I arrived at the campsite, right, I was actually sitting on this patch of grass, right, and I saw a few, those tiny marbles that children play back in the 40s and 50s. They used to play marbles and they throw like on the sand and they play. And I'm thinking like, and I saw those marbles on the first day of when I reached that campsite, right, for my training. I saw those marbles on the sand. So I played with it. I was like thinking, how come there were marbles on this like patch of sand. So I was just playing with it, and I was like playing, and like not really playing as in like playing. I just picked up the marble and I just took a look at it, and I was just like twirling it around, kind of thing. I was alone, at that time, and then my other buddy came and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Hey, look at this. There's marbles on the floor," and he said, "Hey, you sure these marbles like are not from somewhere else or whatever?" And in the midst of our conversation, we were called back to our tents and everything. So that memory pretty much faded away. But as soon as after 5 days passed, and my friend told me he saw a little girl behind me. I remember that I was playing with the small marbles on the sand. I don't know what they call it, sand space. It was some sandy space. I thought it was quite comfy to like sort of like sit down, and everything. And that night, my buddy saw a little girl behind me, and after that night, strange things started to happen in my bunk. I think this thing is pretty much common. It happened like a lot in that island. Like your radio station. We all had a radio in our bunks. Especially at night after dinner. With like when there's no activity, we'd spend our times in the bunk, and like we will turn on the radio. Like English stations or Chinese stations or whatever. But mostly it's going to be English stations because it's something that everyone understands. So I think I remembered we turned on to 98.7 FM. We were listening to English pop songs. At that time, Boyzone, Take That were famous. So I think we were listening to those songs. We were polishing our boots and everything. And then suddenly I remembered the radio station, right, was changing its station on its own. The radio station went from English to Tamil, Indian, and then it went to Chinese, and then it went to like other stations. And we all looked at each other, and I was like, "Hey, what the hell is going on, man?" I was like, "Shit, let's just turn it off, let's just turn it off. So we turned it off, and we all fell asleep. I just recited a few prayers before I sleep, and I fell asleep, and it was fine. I had no nightmares or whatsoever. I think that was some weird. I can't explain what that was. Maybe some magnetic feel or whatsoever. But that happened after the night training, 1 week after all that incident happened. So and then that was pretty much what I encountered during my recruit training. So after that, I was posted as a driver, in which I failed my driver's course. I think it was a blessing in disguise, because I almost died during when I was doing my driver's training course. I was actually supposed to guide a truck that was reversing. I was supposed to give him the hand signals of where to steer his steering wheel when he was reversing the truck. So as he was reversing, I was moving slowly back to the parking space, and then my feet got stuck in the drain, and I couldn't get out of it, and he was reversing the truck, and I kept shouting at him, like stop, but he couldn't hear me, and the trainer was inside the truck, and no one was there. So I finally managed to like pull my feet out just in time before the truck reversed, and I could have been squashed to death by that time, you know. So I was pretty much freaked out by then. So I took my driver's test and everything. I failed because I beat the yellow light and everything, the yellow light. So I beat the traffic at the last phase of the training. So and then I was sent to my another camp. So that was when I was doing my regimental police post, you know, as a guard, you know, at this camp, which was haunted. In my previous story, you know, I told you about this haunted building and everything, you know. So that was years ago, and years ago, right? And then now, that was about 20 odd years ago, you know. This was before I served my reservist. This was during my 2 years of conscription time, you know. And from being a recruit and being a driver, in which I failed, and then being posted into another camp doing regimental police, you know. And when I told you about this haunted building that I encountered, right, you know. So actually last year I was pretty much hanging out in this clubbing space in City Hall. You know, lots of pubs there. And I actually found out that my old bandmates were playing there. You know, so I went there for the first time. I was shocked to see my old army buddy, army friend, and he was singing. You know, he was singing there. You know. And then after he finished performing and everything, he was outside. We had a smoke, you know. So I was talking to him. I said, "Hey, dude, you remember the time when we were in that same camp when that building was haunted, you know?" Then I told him the story about me seeing the owl and the women, the ladies singing in that building and everything. Then he told me, "Dude, that building is really really haunted. You know why?" And I said, "Why?" "That building is haunted because a lot of reservists who goes there, they themselves like they carry certain entities within them, or as a form of protection, or like we are talking about like 40-50-year-old guys here, like doing reservist training, and like when you go into the jungle, you need like a certain form of talisman or whatever, that protects you, So what he told me was, these reservists, what they did was, after their training, they would like probably share their talismans. Like, this is what I have for my protection, and this is what I have, this is what I use, like different rings, like rings or on their fingers, these rings maybe have some entities in them. And my friend told me that these reservists, right, they would they would after the training, right, they would like just let the spirit or the ghost just they'll just leave it there in that building, So he told me like a lot of shit happened in that building. He himself has encountered like noises at night, or sometimes during the day he would hear like people moving around, or he would see shadows. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't know all the while, man, And he told me that there was one night he was doing guard duty. No, he wasn't doing guard duty. He was just staying in camp. He was just staying in there because he had to work. He had to work early the next morning, so he might as well stay in there. So one night he was staying in there, and he was just spending time with one of his friend who was doing guard duty in the ammo room at night, and he was supposed to take care of the ammo room, make sure no one. Because there were reservists there, so he had to make sure they all get their supply of ammo and everything before they do their training and everything. And he said there was one night everyone was asleep, and he was alone with this buddy in the storeroom, and they were playing some computer games in the office, and they saw something in white just flew around and around that window and everything, and he told me, dude, that building is totally haunted, man. It's like a lot of reservists, they just throw away all these evil things. They just leave it there, man. And I was like, oh, okay, And yeah, that was one thing I found out from my buddy who was from the same camp. But actually, I did actually found out one thing. Actually, when I was in that camp, which was at a Tanjung camp in Boon Lay Way, right? During my first day when I was posted there, right, I got into the guard room, right, and after a few weeks, right, I noticed there was something on the wall of the guard room. It was in the guard room. On the wall, on top of where the guard room was sitting, there was this like Chinese hexagon yin and yang symbol with a mirror on it, something like that. And then I was looking at it, so I asked my previous guards, my previous friends whom I just met. I asked them, hey, what is that thing doing there, man? And then they told us this story. Way back before I was posted in, something happened in that guard room, that they saw this white color, they saw this women, lady in white, came out in front of the guard room, and she was just standing there, and it freaked out everyone in the guard room, and everyone was scared, and they saw the lady just circling and circling and circling around the guard room at a very fast rate, and so they reported this incident to the officers, and the officers who actually did duties there they actually had experienced that same experience, and then they decided to put that thing up there. And since they put that symbol up there for protection or whatever, that lady in white wasn't didn't I mean that haunting stopped from then on, and everything. I was like, oh my god, what did I just got myself into, man? But I was like pretty much cool at that time. I was still a young 21, 22 year old. That was like my last year of doing conscription in that unit, and everything. Before then, I was after I completed my 2 years of conscription in that unit, I had to wait for like a few more years till I got posted to my reservist camp, But my reservist camp was fine. Nothing was happening in my reservist camp. I was posted into the infantry. I became an infantryman. It was fine. Nothing haunted took place in that camp. It was at Clementi Loop 8 SIR infantry. Nothing much happened there. It was fine. So anyway, I'm just sharing my story because I'm recalling back all of these things in my mind, and before I forget, I might as well record all this down. So anyway, I'm just sharing. That's all. Thanks.